guys, how you doing? This is Clay, and I've got another guitar lesson coming at you. And today I was going for number one, to look really crazy, put a lot of things in my head. So I hope I'm accomplishing that, because I'm running the HT500 for my guitar, and I'm also using this mic. So I hope it looks really crazy, so maybe you can get a chuckle. But secondly, I wanted to talk about blues soloing. And one thing that has always amazed me about guys is ways in which they can take something that's relatively simple and make it really cool and ornate and complex. And so I wanted to talk about different ways in which you can take a simple concept and use it to make something cool. First and foremost, I wanted to talk about your note choice. So, I would say that your standard blues playing, if I'm in the key of C here, that's pretty standard, your blues scale, and that sounds great. But one thing that you can do that is a simple idea to help bring some contrast is use both major and minor licks. So what I'm going to use to exemplify this is one of Joe Bonamassa's, one of my favorite blues solo of his is on the single Blues Deluxe. And the opening lick is something like this. And that's a major riff. And then he goes into a minor riff. So he starts with a major riff, then goes to a minor riff. Then we change to the fourth. Then this old Albert King. So another minor riff, and then he goes into a B.B. King lick. So he's got four licks there. The first one is major, the second one's minor. The third one is minor, but then he goes back to major with the fourth one. So by kind of stepping in and out, major, minor, minor, major, he's getting a lot of variety, a lot of contrast. And if you listen to the song, it kind of does this like back and forth, and he uses the contrast from major to minor as almost like an effect to create an interesting solo. So number one, using your note choice, using both major and minor licks can really help make something really interesting, because he's playing familiar licks. Something like this has been heard. That's a really common lick. So is this one. Both of those are very common licks, but by contrasting them, major to minor, they pop, they stand out a little bit more, and you can use that change almost as an effect to grab your listener's ear. Another thing you can do with your note choice is to pay attention to where you're at on the fretboard. So let's say we're playing in G. If you're wanting to go to a really big part of your solo, if you're wanting to really step things up a notch, go up an octave up here, so. So, down here is kind of your bass. That's your home bass. But then you can go up here if you really want to, have a big push, a big climax, if you really want to be loud and bold. And then go back down when you're kind of winding up your solo. That's one thing you hear Stevie Ray Vaughan do a lot on a lot of his solos is on Texas Flood, he plays in G flat, and for some of his really, really big licks, especially at Live at El Macambo, he'll go up here and just rip off some really huge licks, but then slide back down effortlessly to the lower register. And the way in which he contrasts there with his note choice is really effective, and he uses it as a vehicle to kind of portray the mood of the song. So those are a couple ways in which you can use your note choice. What notes are you playing to kind of make things interesting. A third way is by utilizing different places on the neck. So let's take that Stevie Ray Vaughan Texas Flood, for example. This is a lick. that lick, that old Albert King lick, is pretty popular. So you've got your that extension of the blues scale there. But what you can also do is go to a different section of the neck and play the same notes. So this is the same as this, but they sound different because you're utilizing different strings. And this, it's very pinchy and kind of high, but this one is a little bit more mellow. So you're playing the same notes, but you're just playing them on different strings or on different locations of the neck. And you could even go up here. So those are 3 different places where you're playing the same notes, but because you're playing different strings and you're playing on different places of the neck, they sound different. So if you want it to be bright and pinchy, play it here. Maybe use your fingers. And then if you want it to be a little more mellow, go up here. So you can use that as another way of varying your note choice. You're still playing the same licks, but you can use the differences in the way the strings sound and the way the areas of the neck sound to get a different feel. Second way of doing this is through manipulating your gear. Now there's a ton of different ways to do it. I would say that using effects pedals is probably the primary way. And that can be really powerful, really popular. So something like a fuzz pedal. You can put on a fuzz pedal, and that almost will, or maybe even a delay too. With both of those pedals, it opens up new doors. It gives you new direction for taking your playing. It gives you, it almost kind of like shapes the way you play. So like with a fuzz, so one of the things you can do, because the fuzz gives you this killer sustain, is use that sustain almost as an effect and hold a note for an extremely long period of time. And use that sustain that the fuzz gives you as almost like this, when you're holding a note for a lot longer than you normally do, it grabs the listener. It's like, whoa, he's really holding that thing. It kind of does an interesting effect. The same thing could be said about delay. That's one thing that Joe does, is he actually will swell. I can't do it very well, but you actually play with the delay. So you're kind of using the delay to change your playing, maybe using more slides to give kind of that whooshing sound, or playing a little bit more rhythmically to match the delay with your rhythm section. It can be really cool. Also, not even thinking about using effects pedals, but just using kind of your guitar and your hands and your techniques as your gear. Number one is your volume knob. So if you wanted to. And then when you want to go really big. So you're using the volume knob to lay low and then bring it up really when you want to go big. Also, using your pick versus your fingers can really make a big difference. So like I was saying with those different licks, if you play with your fingers on the high string, it kind of does this like pinching, kind of like a ringing type sound, Whereas if you're using your pick up on the higher, contrasted. So again, it can really contrast, going for different sounds. You're playing the same thing that you normally play, but you're just using a change in your gear, your technique, to get a different sound. Also, another thing you can do is with your picking, not only with your fingers and your pick, but actually picking near the bridge. So again, it's just a different sound. It's a different way in which you can playing the same notes, the same scales, the same riffs, but you're using different techniques, different ways of manipulating your gear to get a different sound. And also, in the end, combining all of these things together can be really cool. When you go to play those major licks with your pick, you hit on a fuzz or maybe a delay. So combining all of these different things together, it can really make things really cool and interesting. And again, you're not necessarily trying to play new and different notes or licks, but you're just using these different techniques to get more mileage out of those licks, to make them more interesting, to make them, grab your listener. Well, I hope you guys found that's interesting. I hope that you enjoyed the headset. And let me know what you guys think.